The days following the dramatic events in the Senate were tense and uncertain. The Kryn society, once rigid and orderly under Zaratha's rule, now teetered on the edge of chaos. General Vrax had seized control with brute force, declaring himself the new emperor. But his rise to power was met with mixed reactions. Some Kryn supported him, drawn to his strength and promises of unity through discipline. Others, however, resented his violent methods and feared what his leadership might mean for their future. For the human settlers, the situation was precarious. While Vrax's takeover created an opening to push for peace, it also heightened the risk of conflict. His aggressive nature made him unpredictable, and his disdain for humans was no secret. Rachel knew they had to act quickly to solidify their position before Vrax could consolidate his authority. "We need to show them that we're not a threat," Rachel said during another strategy meeting. "If we can prove our value as allies, some of the senators might side with us instead of Vrax." Emily nodded. "We should focus on practical solutions, things that benefit both species, like sharing medical knowledge or helping improve their infrastructure," Daniel added. "And we shouldn't forget Lyra. She's already shown she's willing to help. Maybe she can be a bridge between us and the other Kryn." Rachel agreed. "Let's reach out to her, see if she can rally more supporters among the younger Kryn who might be open to change." That evening, Daniel arranged a secret meeting with Lyra outside the colony's perimeter. They chose a quiet spot near one of the crystal forests, where the shimmering trees cast soft, multicolored light across the ground. Lyra arrived cautiously, her movements quick and alert. When she saw Daniel waiting alone, she relaxed slightly, but kept her distance. "You took a big risk coming here," Daniel said softly. "Thank you." Lyra tilted her head, studying him with her large, glowing eyes. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for my people. Vrax will destroy everything if he isn't stopped." "We know," Daniel replied. "That's why we need your help. There are others like you, Kryn, who want peace, not war. If we work together, maybe we can convince the Senate to choose cooperation over violence." Lyra hesitated, her mandibles clicking faintly as she thought. "It won't be easy. Many fear change, and Vrax has already begun spreading lies about humans, that you're weak and unworthy of trust. That's why we need to show them otherwise," Daniel said firmly. "We have skills and resources that can help the Kryn thrive. All we ask is for a chance to prove it." After a long pause, Lyra finally nodded. "I'll try, but you must be careful. Vrax watches everyone now. If he suspects betrayal, there will be consequences." Over the next few days, Lyra worked quietly to gather support among the younger Kryn workers and servants. She spoke to those disillusioned by Vrax's harsh tactics, emphasizing the benefits of working with humans rather than against them. Slowly, a small group began to form, Kryn willing to listen and consider alternatives to Vrax's vision of dominance. Meanwhile, Rachel and Emily focused on preparing tangible examples of human-Kryn collaboration. They organized demonstrations, showcasing advanced tools and techniques that could improve the Kryn's daily lives. For instance, they introduced irrigation systems that could increase crop yields and energy-efficient lighting powered by axionite crystals. These innovations caught the attention of several key senators, who began questioning whether Vrax's isolationist approach was truly in their best interest. When the time came for another Senate session, Rachel led the human delegation with renewed confidence. This time, they brought prototypes of their inventions, setting them up in the center of the chamber for all to see. As the senators filed in, many paused to examine the displays, their curiosity piqued. Vrax glared at the humans from his newly claimed throne, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming menacingly. "What trickery is this?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hall. "You dare bring your machines into our sacred space?" Rachel stepped forward calmly, addressing the chamber directly. "These are not tricks, they are gifts. Tools, designed to strengthen your people and ours. We offer them freely, hoping to build a partnership based on mutual respect." Before Vrax could respond, one of the senators spoke up, a tall, elderly Kryn named Kalis, known for his wisdom. "Enough of your threats, Vrax. Let us hear what these humans propose." Encouraged by Kalis's support, Rachel continued. We understand that times are changing for your people. Leadership is shifting, and decisions made now will shape your future. Working together offers stability and prosperity. Rejecting us only invites division and hardship. As Rachel spoke, Daniel noticed subtle nods from several senators, including some who had previously been hostile. Lyra stood near the back of the room, her presence unnoticed by most but reassuring to Daniel. Her efforts were paying off. Vrax growled in frustration, slamming a clawed limb against the armrest of his throne. You speak of unity, but your kind brings nothing but weakness. We do not need your charity. At that moment, Emily stepped forward holding up a small device. This is not charity, it's progress. Watch. She activated the device, which emitted a low hum as it projected a holographic map of Axion Prime onto the floor. The map highlighted areas rich in resources, along with potential sites for joint development projects. This technology allows us to plan efficiently and avoid conflicts over land or materials, Emily explained. Imagine what we could achieve if we combined our strengths. The senators leaned closer, intrigued by the display. Even Vrax seemed momentarily distracted, his glowing eyes narrowing as he studied the map. Sensing an opportunity, Rachel pressed further. We are not asking for control or favoritism. We simply wish to coexist peacefully and share in the wealth of this planet. Together, we can ensure a brighter future for everyone. Her words resonated with many in the chamber, especially the younger senators influenced by Lyra's advocacy. One by one, they began voicing their agreement, challenging Vrax's authority. The general seethed with anger but found himself increasingly isolated as dissent grew louder. By the end of the session, a tentative resolution was reached. The Kryn Senate would form a committee to explore partnerships with the humans. It was a small victory, but a significant step toward lasting peace. As the humans left the hall, Daniel glanced back at Lyra, who gave him a brief nod of approval. Though challenges remained, hope lingered in the air. Change was slow, but it was happening. And Daniel knew they were on the right path. In the quiet mountains of Colorado, far away from the noise of cities, there was a small observatory. It wasn't famous or grand like some of the larger facilities around the world, but it had one thing that made it special: Matthew Carter. Matthew was an astronomer who spent most of his nights staring at the stars through powerful telescopes. He loved the silence of the mountains and the way the sky seemed endless above him. To Matthew, every star held a mystery waiting to be uncovered. One chilly evening, as he adjusted the settings on his equipment, something unusual caught his attention. A faint signal pulsed across the screen in front of him. At first, he thought, it might just be interference from Earth's satellites or some natural cosmic event. But as he analyzed the data, he realized it wasn't random noise. The signal repeated itself in a pattern, too precise to be an accident. His heart raced. This wasn't just any signal, it was deliberate. Over the next few days, Matthew worked tirelessly to decode the message. With help from linguists and cryptographers, they finally pieced together its meaning. The message came from a distant planet called Zorath. Its creators, a species known as the Valons, were sending out a desperate plea for help. They described their world as being under attack by another species, the Krylos. Cities were burning, people were dying, and they begged anyone who could hear them to come to their aid. News of the discovery spread quickly. Governments around the world convened emergency meetings to discuss what to do. Among those invited to speak was Rachel Monroe, a diplomat known for her calm demeanor and sharp-minded. She had spent years negotiating peace treaties between warring nations on Earth, and now she was asked to weigh in on whether humanity should get involved in an alien conflict. Rachel listened carefully as military leaders argued that this was a chance for Earth to show its strength and form alliances with advanced civilizations. Others, however, shared Rachel's concerns about rushing into a war they didn't fully understand. Captain Daniel Hayes, a decorated officer with a reputation for bold decisions, was particularly vocal. "We can't ignore this," he said, during one heated meeting. "If we don't act, who will?" The Valens are counting on us. His words resonated with many in the room, especially after images sent by the Valens reached Earth. The pictures showed devastation on a scale no one had ever seen before. Entire cities lay in ruins, black smoke choking the skies. Refugees fled in panic while strange ships loomed overhead, raining destruction upon everything below. Public opinion began to sway heavily toward intervention. News outlets covered the story nonstop, showing interviews with experts and emotional appeals from celebrities urging action. Politicians gave speeches about humanity's responsibility to protect weaker civilizations. Even children wrote letters asking why Earth wouldn't help the poor Valens. Against this backdrop of pressure, Earth's leaders decided to send a fleet to Zorath. Admiral Laura Bennett, a seasoned commander respected for her strategic brilliance, was put in charge of the mission. As preparations got underway, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She tried voicing her concerns during strategy sessions, pointing out gaps in the information provided by the Valens. Why hadn't they mentioned how the conflict started? What did the Krylos want? And why were they so eager to involve humans in their fight? Her questions earned her annoyed looks from Captain Hayes and others, who dismissed her as overly cautious. "We don't have time for second-guessing," Hayes snapped during one meeting. "Every day we delay is another day the Valens suffer." Despite her reservations, Rachel threw herself into the mission. She knew diplomacy would play a crucial role once they arrived at Zorath, and she wanted to be ready. Meanwhile, technicians like Jason Park worked long hours preparing the ships for launch. Jason was young and idealistic, thrilled to be part of such a historic endeavor. He often stayed late into the night, fine-tuning engines and running simulations to ensure everything would go smoothly. The day finally came when Earth's fleet launched into space. Thousands gathered to watch as the massive vessels rose into the sky, leaving behind trails of fire and smoke. For many, it felt like the beginning of a new era, an era where humanity stepped onto the galactic stage not as observers but as active participants. Pilots like Ethan Cole felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as they prepared for battle. Ethan had grown up dreaming of flying among the stars, but he never imagined his first mission would involve fighting in someone else's war. As the fleet approached Zorath, the reality of the situation became clearer. The planet was a shadow of its former self. Once vibrant cities now resembled graveyards, their streets empty and buildings reduced to rubble. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. The Valens greeted the humans with gratitude, their leader, Kyle Thar, thanking them profusely for answering their call. He spoke of the Krylos with fear and hatred, describing them as merciless invaders bent on wiping out all life. Admiral Bennett wasted no time deploying troops and setting up forward bases. Ethan found himself flying alongside Valen pilots, engaging in fierce battles against the Krylos. The enemy ships were fast and deadly, their weapons capable of tearing through even the strongest shields. Early victories boosted morale, and many began to believe that humanity could turn the tide of the war. But cracks started forming within the alliance almost immediately. Rachel noticed troubling patterns. The Valens seemed reluctant to commit, large numbers of their own forces instead pushing humans to take greater risks. Soldiers whispered among themselves about feeling used, and some began questioning whether the Valens were truly as innocent as they claimed. Despite these growing doubts, the mission continued, driven by a mix of duty, pride, and the hope that Earth could make a difference. Unbeknownst to everyone, the truth about the conflict was far more complicated than anyone realized. And as the war dragged on, it would force humanity to confront difficult questions about trust, morality, and the true cost of helping others. When humanity's fleet arrived at Zorath, the sight was worse than anyone had imagined. The planet's surface was scarred by endless battles. Smoke rose from craters where cities once stood, and the air was thick with ash. Even from orbit, the destruction was clear. Admiral Laura Bennett ordered her ships to land near one of the few remaining Valen settlements, a place called Thalvern. It was a grim welcome. The ground was littered with debris, and survivors moved slowly, their faces marked by exhaustion and despair. A delegation led by Rachel Monroe stepped off the landing craft. They were greeted by a group of Valens, their tall, slender forms draped in tattered robes. At the center of the group stood Kael'thar, the leader of the Valons. His voice trembled as he thanked the humans for coming. "You are our only hope," he said, his large eyes filled with tears. "Without your help, we will not survive." Rachel nodded politely but kept her emotions in check. She had been trained to remain calm in tense situations, and this was no exception. As Kael'thar spoke, she studied him closely. There was something about his tone that didn't sit right with her. He seemed too eager to shift the burden of the war onto humanity's shoulders. Still, she reminded herself that appearances could be deceiving. For now, her job was to listen and gather information. Admiral Bennett wasted no time getting to work. Within hours, human troops began setting up forward bases. Pilots like Ethan Cole took to the skies alongside Valan fighters, engaging in fierce dogfights against the Krylos. The enemy ships were sleek and menacing, their weapons capable of inflicting devastating damage. Despite the odds, Ethan and his fellow pilots managed to hold their own. Their early victories boosted morale, and many began to believe that humanity could make a real difference in the war. But as the days passed, cracks started forming within the Alliance. Soldiers noticed unsettling behavior among the Valans. They seemed reluctant to commit large numbers of their own forces, often asking humans to take on the most dangerous missions. Casualties mounted quickly on the human side, while the Valans appeared to suffer far fewer losses. Rumors spread among the troops, and some began questioning whether they were being used as pawns in someone else's war. Rachel couldn't ignore what she was seeing. She voiced her concerns during strategy meetings, pointing out inconsistencies in Kael'thar's stories. "Why aren't the Valans fighting more?" she asked one evening. "Every time we suggest joint operations, they find excuses to stay back." Her words fell on deaf ears. Captain Daniel Hayes dismissed her as overly cautious, accusing her of undermining morale. "We're here to win, not to second-guess every move," he snapped. "If you don't like it, maybe you should go home." Despite the pushback, Rachel pressed on. She spent hours talking to soldiers, gathering first-hand accounts of their experiences. Many shared her suspicions. One pilot told her how a Valan ship had abandoned its position during a critical battle, leaving humans exposed to enemy fire. Another recounted how Valan commanders had refused to share vital intelligence until it was almost too late. Each story added weight to Rachel's growing unease. Ethan, meanwhile, struggled with his own doubts. He had joined the mission full of hope and excitement, eager to prove himself as a pilot. But now, after weeks of relentless combat, he felt drained. The thrill of flying had been replaced by a gnawing sense of futility. Every victory came at a cost, and the Krylos showed no signs of backing down. Worse still, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Valans weren't being entirely honest. Their gratitude seemed forced, their promises vague. One night, unable to sleep, Ethan wandered into the makeshift hangar where Jason Park was working. Jason was a technician who had become a friend over the weeks. He was always tinkering with engines or repairing damaged equipment, his hands stained with grease. When Ethan sat down beside him, Jason looked up and smiled. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. Ethan shook his head. "I keep thinking about all the people we've lost. And for what? Are we really making a difference here?" Jason sighed and wiped his hands on a rag. "I don't know, man. Sometimes I wonder if we're just cleaning up someone else's mess." Their conversation turned to the Valans. Both men agreed that something wasn't adding up. The more they talked, the angrier they became. By the time dawn broke, they had made a decision. If no one else was going to dig deeper, then they would do it themselves. The next day, Ethan and Jason slipped away from the main camp. Using their access codes, they entered a restricted area of the Valan archives. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with glowing panels displaying streams of data. They worked quickly, searching for anything that might shed light on the origins of the conflict. After hours of sifting through files, they found something shocking. Documents detailing how the Valans had provoked the Krylos decades earlier by colonizing one of their moons. The moon contained valuable resources, and when the Krylos demanded its return, the Valans refused. The resulting tensions escalated into war, with the Valens broadcasting their distress signal across the galaxy in hopes of finding allies. Ethan stared at the screen in disbelief. "They lied to us," he muttered. "This whole war, it's their fault." Jason nodded grimly. "We need to tell someone who will listen." They returned to the base and sought out Rachel. She listened intently as they explained what they had discovered. Her expression hardened with each word. When they finished, she took a deep breath. "Thank you for bringing this to me," she said. "But we need to be careful. If we accuse the Valens without proof, it could destroy whatever trust is left." Rachel decided to confront Kelthar directly. She requested a private meeting and presented the evidence she had gathered. At first, the Valen leader denied everything, his voice shaking with indignation. But as Rachel pressed him, his defenses crumbled. Finally, he admitted to the deception. "We had no choice," he said. "The Krylos would have destroyed us if we hadn't acted. We needed help, and we knew no one would come if they thought it was our fault." Rachel felt a surge of anger, but forced herself to stay calm. "Do you realize what you've done?" she asked. "You dragged us into a war based on lies. People are dying because of you." Kelthar lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. Rachel left the meeting feeling both vindicated and hollow. She knew the truth wouldn't be easy to accept, especially for those who had already invested so much in the mission. But keeping silent was no longer an option. Back at the command center, tensions erupted when Rachel shared what she had learned. Some, like Captain Hayes, refused to believe it, accusing her of fabricating evidence to justify withdrawal. Others, including Admiral Bennett, began to waver. The revelation cast a shadow over everything they had accomplished so far. Humanity's role in the war was no longer clear-cut, and the path forward seemed murkier than ever. As debates raged, Ethan and Jason found themselves caught in the middle. They had uncovered the truth, but it brought no satisfaction, only a heavy burden. The war they had fought so hard to win now felt tainted, its purpose stripped away. For the first time, they wondered if victory was even worth pursuing. Unbeknownst to them, the situation was about to get even more complicated. The Krylos, sensing weakness in the Alliance, launched a massive counterattack. Caught off guard, humanity's forces scrambled to respond. Amid the chaos, decisions would have to be made. Decisions that would shape not only the outcome of the war, but also humanity's place in the galaxy. The fragile peace agreement between the Valens and the Krylos marked the beginning of a new chapter. But it was far from the end of challenges. As humanity's fleet prepared to leave Zorath, emotions ran high among the soldiers, technicians, and diplomats who had poured their efforts into the mission. For many, the experience had been life-changing, forcing them to confront difficult truths about trust, morality, and the complexities of interstellar conflict. Rachel Monroe stood on the deck of the command ship, watching as the last of the human forces boarded their vessels. She felt a mix of relief and unease. The negotiations had been exhausting, and while she was proud of what they had achieved, she couldn't shake the feeling that the peace they had brokered was delicate at best. Both the Valens and the Krylos had agreed to share resources and establish boundaries, but old wounds ran deep. One wrong move could reignite the war, undoing everything they had worked for. Admiral Laura Bennett approached Rachel, her expression unreadable. "You did good work here," she said after a moment. "Not everyone would have had the guts to push for diplomacy when so many wanted to keep fighting." Rachel nodded, though she didn't feel particularly heroic. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "and I don't know if it will last. But I think we gave them a chance to heal, if they want it." Bennett sighed, her gaze drifting toward the planet below. "We'll see. For now, let's focus on getting our people home safely." As the ships began their journey back to Earth, the mood aboard was somber. Soldiers like Ethan Cole struggled to process everything they had seen and done. Ethan had joined the mission full of idealism, eager to prove himself as a pilot and make a difference in the galaxy, but the reality of war had stripped away his naivety. He thought about the battles he had fought, the lives lost, and the lies that had driven the conflict. It all felt hollow now, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. Jason, Park, the technician who had helped uncover the truth about the Veilon's deception, tried to stay optimistic. He spent his time tinkering with equipment, keeping busy to avoid dwelling on the past. But even he couldn't ignore the questions gnawing at him. Had their intervention truly helped, or had it only prolonged the suffering? Would the Veilons and the Krylos honor the agreement, or would they turn on each other again? These uncertainties weighed heavily on him, even as he joked with his fellow crew members to lighten the mood. Back on Earth, the aftermath of the Zorath mission sparked widespread debate. News outlets covered the story extensively, with experts weighing in on every aspect of the operation. Some hailed it as a triumph of diplomacy, pointing to the ceasefire as proof that humanity could play a positive role in galactic affairs. Others were more critical, arguing that the mission had exposed flaws in Earth's decision-making processes. How had leaders allowed themselves to be manipulated by the Veilons? Why hadn't they demanded more answers before committing troops to the fight? Politicians faced tough questions from constituents. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read, "No more alien wars," and "Truth before troops." Public opinion was divided, with some calling for stricter regulations on future missions and others urging humanity to remain engaged in interstellar matters. The controversy dominated headlines for weeks, overshadowing other news stories. Rachel found herself at the center of the storm. Her role in exposing the Veilon's deception made her both a hero and a target. Supporters praised her courage and integrity, crediting her with preventing further bloodshed. Critics accused her of undermining military efforts and jeopardized humanity's reputation by questioning allies during wartime. Through it all, Rachel remained calm and composed, using interviews and public appearances to advocate for transparency and accountability. "We can't afford to rush into conflicts without understanding the full picture," she told a packed auditorium during one speech. "This mission taught us that trust is earned, not given freely. If we're going to step onto the galactic stage, we need to do so with clear eyes and open minds." Her words resonated with many, sparking discussions about how humanity should approach future encounters with alien civilizations. Some suggested forming an interstellar council to oversee diplomatic relations, while others pushed for stronger ethical guidelines governing military interventions. Though opinions varied, there was a growing consensus that Earth needed to prepare itself for the complexities of life beyond its borders. Ethan returned to his hometown, a small community nestled in the mountains, where he had grown up dreaming of flying among the stars. At first he tried to settle back into a normal routine, spending time with family and catching up with old friends. But the memories of Zorath lingered, haunting him in quiet moments. He often found himself staring at the night sky, wondering if the peace they had fought for would hold, or if the cycle of violence would begin anew. Determined to find meaning in his experiences, Ethan started volunteering at a local youth center. He shared stories of his time in space, not just the excitement of piloting advanced ships, but also the lessons he had learned about responsibility and sacrifice. The kids listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder. For the first time in months, Ethan felt a sense of purpose. Maybe he couldn't change what had happened on Zorath, but he could help shape the next generation's perspective on the universe. Jason, meanwhile, threw himself into his work. He returned to his job at a research facility, where he focused on developing technologies that could improve communication and resource sharing between species. His time on Zorath had shown him the importance of finding practical solutions to complex problems, and he was determined to contribute in any way he could. Though he sometimes doubted whether his efforts would make a difference, he reminded himself that progress often came in small steps. For Admiral Bennett, the mission brought both pride and reflection. She had led humanity's forces with determination and skill, but she couldn't ignore the mistakes that had been made along the way. In private meetings with military leaders, she pushed for reforms aimed at improving intelligence gathering and decision-making processes. "We can't afford to act blindly again," she said during one such meeting. "Next time we need to know exactly what we're walking into, and why." As months passed, the scars of the Zorath mission began to fade from public consciousness, replaced by new concerns and priorities. But for those who had lived through it, the experience left an indelible mark. They carried its lessons with them, shaping their actions and decisions in ways large and small. In the end, the mission served as a reminder of humanity's potential and its limitations. It showed that even with the best intentions, stepping into another civilization's conflict came with risks and consequences, but it also demonstrated that courage, honesty, and perseverance could pave the way for change. Whether humanity was ready for the challenges ahead remained to be seen, but one thing was certain. The stars were no longer distant lights. They were a frontier filled with possibilities, dangers, and opportunities to grow. Months after the fleet returned from Zorath, life on Earth began to settle into a new rhythm. The mission had left its mark on everyone involved, and its lessons continued to shape decisions in governments, military circles, and communities around the world. For Rachel Monroe, the experience became a turning point in her career. She was invited to speak at international conferences, where leaders sought her insights on diplomacy and ethics in interstellar relations. Her calm demeanor and sharp mind earned her respect even from those who had once doubted her. Rachel used these platforms to push for change. She argued that humanity needed better systems for evaluating alien requests for help. "We can't afford to act out of emotion or fear," she said during one speech. "Every decision must be based on facts, not assumptions. If we're going to step into another species conflict, we need to know the full story, no matter how uncomfortable it may be." Her words struck a chord with many. Governments began drafting stricter protocols for responding to extraterrestrial signals. Scientists and linguists worked together to create tools for analyzing alien messages more thoroughly before committing resources. Military leaders, too, embraced reforms aimed at improving intelligence gathering and ensuring transparency in future missions. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, a step toward avoiding the mistakes made on Zorath. Ethan Cole tried to move forward with his life, though the memories of the war lingered. He found solace in sharing his experiences with others, especially young people eager to hear about space exploration. At the youth center, he became a mentor, teaching kids not just about flying, but also about responsibility and critical thinking. "The stars are beautiful," he told them one afternoon, "but they're also dangerous. If you ever get the chance to explore them, make sure you do it with your eyes wide open." His talks resonated deeply with the children, many of whom dreamed of becoming pilots or scientists. Ethan's honesty about the challenges he faced inspired them to think critically about their ambitions. He often reminded them that bravery wasn't just about taking risks. It was about knowing when to question authority and when to stand up for what was right. Jason Park threw himself into his work, determined to contribute to humanity's future in meaningful ways. His research focused on developing technologies that could facilitate peaceful interactions between species. One project involved creating advanced translation devices capable of interpreting complex languages in real time. Another explored sustainable methods for sharing resources across planets. Though progress was slow, Jason remained optimistic. "If we can build bridges instead of weapons," he often said, "then maybe we won't have to fight so much." Admiral Laura Bennett retired shortly after the mission, passing the torch to younger officers who shared her vision for a stronger, wiser military force. Before stepping down, she implemented sweeping reforms designed to prevent history from repeating itself. Intelligence units were expanded, training programs emphasized ethical decision-making, and alliances with other nations were strengthened to ensure unity in the face of future challenges. Her legacy lived on through the men and women she had mentored, all of whom carried pieces of her wisdom into their own careers. Captain Daniel Hayes struggled to adapt to the changes brought by the mission. Once celebrated as a bold leader, he now faced criticism for his role in pushing for total war without fully understanding the situation. Some accused him of prioritizing pride over caution, while others defended him as someone simply following orders. Over time, Hayes came to terms with his mistakes, acknowledging that leadership meant learning from failure. He took a quieter, position within the military, focusing on strategy rather than action, and became an advocate for careful planning in all operations. Back on Zorath, the peace agreement held, for now. Both the Valens and the Krylos adhered to the terms outlined in the treaty, sharing resources and respecting boundaries, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Old grudges didn't disappear overnight, and both sides remained wary of each other. Observers stationed on neutral moons monitored compliance, reporting back to Earth regularly. So far, there had been no major incidents, but everyone knew the truce was fragile. Kelthar, the Valen leader, faced growing unrest among his people. Many resented him for involving humans in their war and feared retaliation from the Krylos. Others criticized him for agreeing to share resources, viewing it as a betrayal of their survival instincts. Despite the backlash, Kelthar stood firm, believing that cooperation was the only path forward. "We cannot undo the past," he told his advisors during one heated meeting. "But we can choose a different future, one where our children grow up without fear." Vorak, the Krylos envoy, faced similar challenges. His people were skeptical of the agreement, questioning whether the Valans could truly be trusted. Vorak addressed these concerns head-on, reminding his followers of the cost of endless war. "We have bled enough," he declared during a gathering of Krylos leaders. "Let us focus on rebuilding what we have lost. If the Valans break their word, we will respond. But let us give peace a chance first." On Earth, public opinion remained divided. Some viewed the Zorath mission as a necessary step in humanity's journey toward becoming a galactic power. Others saw it as a cautionary tale, warning against overreach and naivety. Debates raged in classrooms, living rooms, and online forums, with no clear consensus emerging. What everyone agreed on, however, was that the mission had changed humanity forever. For the first time, Earth had stepped onto the galactic stage, not as passive observers but as active participants. The experience had revealed both strengths and weaknesses, highlighting the importance of preparation, communication, and humility. Humanity had learned that the universe was vast and unpredictable, filled with wonders and dangers alike. And, while the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, there was hope that the lessons of Zorath would guide future generations. As Rachel gazed at the night sky one evening, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The scars of the mission would always remain, but so would its achievements. Humanity had taken its first steps toward understanding its place in the cosmos, and though the journey was far from over, she believed it was worth pursuing. Ethan, too, looked up at the stars, this time with a sense of purpose. He no longer saw them as distant lights, but as symbols of possibility and responsibility. Jason smiled as he tested a prototype device, imagining how it might one day bridge gaps between worlds. Admiral Bennett reflected on her career, proud of the foundation she had laid for others to build upon. Even Captain Hayes found peace in knowing that he had grown wiser through adversity. In the end, the Zorath mission was neither a complete success nor a total failure. It was messy, complicated, and imperfect, just like humanity itself. But it proved something important, that even in the face of uncertainty and fear, courage and determination could lead to growth. As humanity prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, it did so with clearer eyes and stronger hearts, ready to face the stars with both hope and caution.